Hi, I'm Laura Brown from Mommy and Me Milestones. I am an early intervention SLP and a mom of 2 little boys. I am so excited to be part of the big EI event for the second year in a row, and I want to say thank you again to Becky from the SLT scrapbook for putting this all on. Our topic today is going to be pre-verbal skill development in infants and toddlers. So first, I want to look at this research article from Watt, Weatherby, and Shumway. And they looked at typically developing children and the skills that are most important in predicting expressive language at age 3. And they came up with these 4 skills: joint attention, inventory of gestures, inventory of consonants, and language comprehension. Additionally, other important skills that have been found both in typically developing children and children with developmental disabilities that predict later language abilities include joint attention, symbolic play, intentional communication, using gestures and vocalizations, the complexity of those pre-symbolic vocalizations, the rate of intentional communication behaviors, and again, receptive language. So with using that knowledge from the research and combining that with my clinical experience as an early intervention therapist, I created this graphic and this mnemonic device for pre-verbal skills that need to be developed prior to spoken words. And those 4 areas include interaction, input, imitation, and intent. And you could kind of see these themes coming up in those 2 research sources that we looked through. And I'm sure you've seen these if you are a practicing therapist in early intervention as well. So we're going to talk through each of these areas as they relate to the foundational skills that are needed for spoken language. So first, we have interaction. So we want to know, does the child display social interest? Are they able to be engaged in little social games and play routines? Are they interested in toys? Are they playing? Are they demonstrating functional play and symbolic play? Do they have the ability to demonstrate joint attention? Next, we have input. So we know that language comprehension is extremely important for predicting expressive language later in childhood. So when we think about input, we're questioning, what is the child able to understand? What are they able to comprehend? Really early, we're looking at their ability to anticipate what's going to happen next in a routine. Then we're kind of looking for them to start understanding some really common words and phrases, things like peekaboo, and they know that goes with the routine where you cover your eyes, or bye-bye, and they know that means someone's leaving, or they're leaving. Next, we want to know, can they match an object with its referent? So if you say dog, do they whip their head around and look at your family pet? If you say dada, do they, etc. Also, can they identify common vocabulary either by pointing to it or by bringing you common objects? And then we want to know, what is their ability to follow directions? Can they follow very routine directions, like things they do every day in the same order, like go get your shoes right before you go outside? And can they also follow simple one-step directions? So, and next we're going to look at their imitation skills. So can they participate in a back and forth vocalization or a back and forth play routine, something like rolling a ball back and forth or pushing a car back and forth? Can they imitate actions in play? Can they imitate sounds, simple sounds and play sounds? Are they able to imitate simple words, like those first words we think of, like uh-oh or ball or mama? What are they able to do in regards to being able to imitate something that a caregiver or an adult is modeling for them? We know that imitation is really important for learning new skills by watching what others are doing. And we're also going to think about imitation in regards to that important factor we looked at, which was the inventory of consonants. We are able to build more consonant sounds and build more intentional vocalizations through the skill of imitation. And finally, we're going to look at intent. Is the child able to communicate with eye gaze and joint attention? Are they able to are they able to communicate with a variety of gestures? Are they able to use proximal gestures? Do they have distal gestures like pointing? Do they have any representational gestures or signs that they're able to use? And then finally, once you consider their system of communication, how they're communicating, what are the ways that they're able to communicate? What is the variety of pragmatic functions that they have? Are they able to request, protest, comment? Are they able to ask for help? Are they able to ask questions and participate in social routines? So these 4 eyes, as I kind of created this this little visual, this graphic as a memory device for myself, more or less. These are all kind of pieces of the puzzle when we look at a kid who's not yet using spoken words. So I want this to be this is not intended to be an assessment in and of itself by any means, but can kind of be another tool in your toolbox when you're looking at a child and trying to figure out what is going on with them. Which areas are they strong in? Which areas are they needing support with? And we can kind of use that to guide our interventions. So we're going to talk through a few intervention strategies for each of these areas. So we know interaction is the most important, really, foundational skill, because it's the skill from which all other skills come from. We need that foundation of engagement, that ability to have social reciprocity in order for really learning to take place and for communication to be meaningful. It's all kind of based in these interaction skills. So this is an important one, and not one that you can skip over. If this is not there, this is absolutely where you have to start. So one intervention strategy for interaction is called PIWI, Parents Interacting with Infants. This is a training out of Vanderbilt University, and they talk through dyadic strategies to improve mutually satisfying interactions. And they talk about 5 key components of setting up an interaction so that you are creating an enjoyable shared experience where learning can really take place. So we'll talk through those 5. The first strategy is setting the stage for the interaction. So you're going to get down on the floor with the child, you're going to get face to face, and you're going to have developmentally appropriate toys ready to go based on that child's age and developmentally what they're able to do. Second, we're going to think about maintaining the child's interest and keeping their attention. So we're going to be very warm, be very enthusiastic. We're going to use parentees. We'll use novel items to really keep their interest and bring them back if we need to. And the third strategy is to establish turn taking. So thinking about imitating what they're doing and waiting and seeing if you can kind of start that back and forth interaction in that way. And games like peekaboo, those back and forth. Even just like simple vocal play can be a really good way to practice this third strategy. Fourth, you're going to match and follow. So they suggest kind of 3 steps. You're going to wait, watch, and join. So you're really following your child's lead, you're commenting on what they're interested in, and really letting them kind of lead the play and show you what they're wanting to do. And finally, you're going to support and scaffold. So here you're going to, this is where you kind of start to shape those communication behaviors. So you're going to really respond to any attempts they have to communicate. You're going to arrange the environment so that they have more opportunities to communicate, and you're going to try to shape those more complex communication behaviors through modeling. Next, we'll look at a strategy for joint attention, and this is behavior chain disruption. This is where you initiate an activity. It has to be enjoyable or it does not work. It has to be enjoyable for the child and highly motivating. You're going to create a routine within this activity, and then you're going to essentially disrupt that routine by pausing in the middle of it and waiting for the child to indicate to you in some way that they want that routine to continue. And this is a great opportunity for a child who's not yet demonstrating joint attention to look at you to indicate that they want that routine to continue, and you have established then that triangle of attention. So let's take a look at what that might look like.
On the bus go round and round, round and round, round and round. The wheels on the bus go round and round, all through the town. The wipers on the bus go swish, 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 swish. The wipers on the bus go swish, 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 all through the town. The people on the bus go up and down, up and down.
All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is input. So we know that receptive language is an extremely important predictor of expressive language. And we also know that the types and quantity of input that a parent provides can predict receptive vocabulary skills later in childhood, which is pretty amazing. So the research study by Rowe in 2019 found that both the quality of input and the quantity of input were important in predicting later vocabulary skills. So we need a lot of input, but we also need diverse types of input, rare words, and we're going to look at types of input on the next slide here. So these are 4 of the types of input that I like to coach families on. Self-talk and parallel talk are what most people think of when they give the advice, talk to your baby, tell them everything you're doing. So self-talk would be talking about things as you're doing them. I'm changing your diaper. Parallel talk would be talking about what they're doing. You're eating your strawberries. Then linguistic mapping and following commenting, those require a little more of following your child's interest and kind of being a detective and using that context to provide input. So in the example for linguistic mapping, you're going to look at the ways your child is communicating with you non-verbally, and you are going to map words to those communication acts. So if you have a child who's reaching up to the counter to try to grab their cup of water, you might say, water, please, or I want water, or just water. And then with following commenting, you're going to kind of do the same thing. You're going to follow their lead, see what catches their interest, and you're going to comment on the things that are catching their attention and keeping their interest. So some general strategies for input that you're probably pretty familiar with: getting on the child's level, following their lead, commenting on what catches their interest, using parentees, that slow, stretchy, exaggerated pitch changes to really keep their interest, helping them connect words with their referent. So if you see them look at a squirrel, you can say squirrel. And then using simple phrases, always using more comments than questions, and modeling language just above whatever their current level is. So for a child who's not talking at all, really using like single words or maybe some 2 and 3 word combinations, but keeping it really simple for those kids. And you can also use gestures and signs to aid language comprehension. All right, next we're going to move on to imitation, which is really important for learning new skills, because if we're modeling something, imitation is required for a child to take what we're modeling and produce it themselves. And imitation is also how we work on getting that, increasing the variety of consonants that a child is able to produce, which we talked about as being one of the important predictors for expressive language. So I like to think of this little hierarchy of imitation, starting with back and forth routines, like maybe just taking turns vocalizing, or taking turns doing a simple thing like hitting a drum, and then the child hits the drum. So going back and forth in a simple play routine. Next, working on imitating actions in play. So maybe you feed the baby, or you kiss the baby and the child kisses the baby. Next, simple sounds, something like for yummy, or ah for or like aw for a little cute sound. And then play sounds, some more advanced ones like moo or boo, and then moving to simple words. Some strategies for imitation: contingent imitation would be repeating sounds and actions after the child does them. So you're gonna kind of set the stage for imitation by imitating the child, and then hoping that that turns into a back and forth, a reciprocal kind of exchange. Being silly really helps, and matching actions in play with really fun sound effects. So when you pop a bubble, you can, get really animated and say, ooh, so it's really exciting and fun, and that's going to really keep their interest and motivate them to try to join you in that type of play. And then you can always imitate gestures with nursery songs, and then use that auditory closure strategy in familiar books, songs, or like a verbal routine. So something like ready, set, and they say go. Or if they know the song, if you're happy and you know it, clap your, and maybe the child can fill in the word. Or same with like a familiar book that they've read a bunch of times, if they can fill in the last word in the line. Finally, we're going to talk about intent. When we are thinking about intent, we are evaluating the child's communication system. So we're thinking about what are the ways that they're able to communicate, and what are the functions of that communication. And let's take a look at the way intent develops, starting with the pre-intentional phase, where young babies communicate with crying or idiosyncratic behaviors that parents might assign meaning to, but aren't really conventional recognized forms of communication. And then the shift to intentional communication happens between 6 and 9 months, and there is a phase of development where a child can be intentional but pre-symbolic, meaning they are able to communicate with a triadic gaze using joint attention. They are able to use maybe some proximal gestures like bringing you something for help or pointing to something they like. That would be a distal gesture. But they are not yet using any symbolic gestures, which takes us to the next level, which would be symbolic but pre-verbal. So this is where you might see a child using symbolic gestures like holding up a hand for a phone, or maybe even some simple signs if the parents or you have introduced those. And then finally, we have the final level, which would be spoken language. So some strategies for shaping intent include contingent and consistent caregiver responses. So really trying to pay attention to the ways that our children or a child we're working with is communicating, and being very responsive to that and treating them as a communication partner. And also, it's important to acknowledge those communication acts, but we can also scaffold more mature forms of communication. So maybe if a child is pointing to something that they want, we can model the word for what they're pointing to. So we're kind of trying to acknowledge their communication, but also work on shaping their communication so we can get them closer to that spoken language level. Finally, we can use environmental arrangement. So making changes in the environment that give a child more opportunities or more reasons to communicate and to initiate communication. And then with that, we can use linguistic mapping, which we're going to take a look at in this next video.
That Archer is wanting this ball. He's looking at it. And I might be inclined to just pick it up and put it on his tray and give it back to him. We're going to add one thing here, and this is so easy, and it's really going to help your child speed up their language learning. Archer, ball? You want the ball. Good job, the ball.
I currently have this free resource on my website in the members only section. So if you would like to get a copy of the PDF printable for this, you can just go to my account and go to the link in bio and sign up for free resources with your email address. Thank you so much for being here. You can get this resource and more on my website, and find me on Instagram over at Mommy and Me Milestones. I would love to have you join me over there. Thank you again to Becky for hosting the big EI event, and thank you for joining me.